Let's be honest, modern medicine is broken. Patients are dismissed, doctors are exhausted, and mental health care is decades behind. So it's time to disrupt the status quo, to challenge a system that fragments care, dehumanizes patients, and burns out clinicians. I'm Dr. Georgine Nanos, and this is The Kind Revolution, a podcast about breaking old paradigms, rebuilding medicine with compassion and science, and reimagining what healthcare can be when we finally get it right. Because change is here, and it's starting with us. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome back to The Kind Revolution. Today's conversation is a really special one because it sits at the heart of what we talk about here on The Kind Revolution, and that's whole person wellness and healing beyond traditional boxes and traditional spaces. I'm joined today by my two good friends and colleagues, Dr. Shannon Lerach, MDRIA, certified trauma specialist and registered play therapist, and Dr. Ali Freedman, licensed clinical psychologist, equus coach, and co-founders of Horseplay Collective and Reciprocity Ranch. Together, they are redefining what therapy can look like, integrating play, movement, nature, and horses into trauma-informed healing for children, families, and adults. We're going to be exploring big T and little t trauma, why trauma lives in the body, and how alternative therapeutic modalities can unlock healings in ways that traditional talk therapy can't. So thank you so much to both of you for being here. Let's start about how you two met and started working together. Give me the origin story.
Wow, we could take your whole episode with that story. I don't know how much time you have. How many years do you want us to go back?
Then we'd be talking about Big T terrific.
Give me the abridged version. Okay, well, so we first met, gosh, I don't know. I think I say like 15 years. Is that about right? 15 years ago when Allie hired me for my first job at a grad school. She was sort of the manager of the Fred Finch Youth Center. And I was applying to work for a program that helped to stabilize foster kids in placements, kids who were really at risk and had had multiple placements. And I walked into her office of chaos, and she had her bright smile, and I think you had your braids in. And I remember she was looking at my resume and was like, I feel like I'm looking at my own resume. Like, we knew all the same people, we had all the same sort of references, and we had gone to the same schools, but we had just managed never to have crossed paths before that moment.
Yeah. So the program that Shannon came to work in served foster kids and families. And by families, I mean to express that in a broad sense. Their biological families, as well as the families who were providing, a home and family setting for them while they were in care. Unfortunately, it's extraordinarily difficult to have any role in the foster care system, be it the child, the parent, the social worker, the attorney, any of it. And we wanted to, our goal of this program was to help these kids have the fewest further disruptions in their life, right? They'd already at least been removed from their home, their family of origin. And unfortunately, you could give less notice to have a child removed from your home than you would to Starbucks for your barista job. And, when you think about the implications that has for the child and their development and their emotions and their social skills and their scholastic achievement, it's tremendous. And so that whole program was focused on providing these kids and their solar systems as much flexible and expert support as possible. And so Shannon was hired into that program as a licensed bilingual psychologist. And in doing so, we also realized, based on our resumes and also the conversations we had subsequently, we had a lot in common, including animals and travel and our very deep passion for supporting people who really need it, supporting people who had experienced trauma in any number of ways.
What was the moment you guys knew that Reciprocity Ranch needed to exist?
Well, that came much, much later. So I'll give you a little snippet of the middle. So I left that program a little shy of 2 years after she hired me to go to Liberia to sort of do my own little Peace Corps thing after I had gotten certified in EMDR. and wanted to get as much sort of hands-on training as I could. And also because I had told Allie I knew I was going to need to quit at some point because I wanted to be friends with her, and I couldn't be friends with her as her employee. So it was the perfect opportunity to launch out of there and into our friendship. And so then fast forward to 2017, 2018, Allie invited me to participate in an Equus training to become a certified Equus coach. And because she knew I'm such a nerd that I will sign up for just about any training that comes my way, because I think that's all fascinating and fantastic, and throw animals in and I'm a total sucker. So we headed out to Tucson?
Scottsdale.
Oh, Scottsdale. To this place called Big Sky Foxtrotters, where we did the first of 2 3-day weekend intensives at this place. And we would like watch the sunrise at our little Airbnb, and then hop in the car and head over to this place to get there hours before the training was actually starting, because we just wanted to like run out and be with this incredible herd of horses that this woman had, including a couple of yearlings that I was like madly in love with. And then we would stay hours afterwards. And so when we were driving home from that first training, we spent like the whole time talking about how could we bring this back to the populations that we love to serve and work with. Like, how can we recreate this for our favorite target populations that we know desperately need this kind of connected, trauma informed experience.
So we fell hard and fast.
You did.
In
You
many
did.
ways.
Yes. So tell me a little bit more about Equus coaching, and tell me what equine therapy looks like for our audience that has either never heard of it before, doesn't quite understand the nuances of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are two sort of main branches of equine therapy when people talk about it. And one involves being on the horse and riding the horse, and the other involves only groundwork. And so that one is entirely relational. All hooves and feet remain on the ground at all times. Types that involve riding are tremendous, and people should absolutely look into those. They're great for everybody, but they particularly excel for individuals that have physical differences and mobility challenges, as well as people with significant sensory challenges, including those on the autism spectrum. So it is amazing, and we don't do it. What we do is the side of the choose your own adventure that is groundwork. And there are a number of different training programs that people can go through. EGALA is one very commonly known one. The one that we happen to go through is called Equus. But all of it really centers around sort of the language, so to speak, of horses. Horses are prey animals. So despite there being, 1,000, 1,200 pounds of sheer muscle, their eyes are on the side of their head, which is an indication that they're a prey animal. They eat grass, another indication that they're not quite good at hunting. And in fact, they're hunted. And so their survival depends on their awareness of themselves, and the surroundings for like 3 miles. So when you imagine the sort of level of attunement and sensitivity that it requires to be aware on all of those levels, while, by the way, your job is to eat like 22 hours a day, you're dealing with an extraordinarily fine-tuned animal. And in this case, in the case of equine therapy or equine coaching, that attuned animal is actually our co-therapist or our co-facilitator. So because they are so tuned in, they know what's going on in their body, but as soon as you enter their orbit, they know what's going on in your body. So if you ever forget your stethoscope, we can just phone a friend and ask a horse, because they know what your blood pressure is, what your heart rate is, what your respiration rate is. And so one example of how magically they can support us is knowing that they cue into where we are. And if we, as the person along for the ride, allow ourselves to connect with that horse, like energetically. Could be physically, certainly. You could be touching the horse, but you don't have to be. If you just sort of lean into the shared presence of that horse, your heart rate and blood pressure and respiration rate will go down. We can't quite match that of the horse, but we will begin to co-regulate with them. So that's, sort of one example of how we can really benefit from just the biological interaction or the physiological interaction with horses.
As Ali was saying, in our form of equine therapy, when it's groundwork and it's all relational, the horse is our co-therapist, our mirror, and our guide. And so what we're doing is we're using the horse's natural sensitivity and attunement to help us become aware of things that are going on inside of ourselves that we may not be aware of, right? They are helping us take a look inside by reflecting to us what's really going on, not what we say is going on, not our words, because they don't care about what we say. They care about how we show up, how we actually feel, and then they respond in kind. And so then that gives us an opportunity to see what's really going on inside of us and bring that to our conscious awareness and then do something about it if we're so inclined.
Or in situations where it might begin to be safe, right? So when we talk about the populations that we love to serve, they're folks who have experienced and lived through trauma. So they already know that the world is not inherently safe. Unfortunately, there are many, many risks out there. They know that they have to sort of box themselves up. Sometimes they need to separate themselves. Sometimes they need to often separate their heads from the rest of their bodies, just in order to try to maintain a sense of safety. And, I'm not going to tell a veteran of a war that the world is safe, because that's sort of silly. They've been trained to push down their fear and go into it anyway. But when they come home and they go to engage with their families, their kids, their partners, and they keep that really, really tall, really, really strong wall up, it can kind of take a little bit of the air out of the sails of a relationship. So what we can do is help show them that this is what that looks like. This is how it impacts another party, right? The horse isn't holding anything against you. They're not still upset because you forgot their anniversary or anything like that. They are just responding to you right then, right there, whatever you are putting out and whatever you are holding in. And they call it like they see it. We show them that. And then in this tiny little safe bubble that we can create, we invite them to just try it a little bit differently. They don't even have to truly invite us into it. If we just ask them to kind of close their eyes and go within and just feel whatever they're feeling, they don't have to say a thing. That horse is then going to respond to them differently. And that horse is almost invariably going to respond to them in a way that helps create safety for that person. And like, what a powerful lesson, gift, thing, right? To show
Sounds
someone.
magical. Yes.
I mean, and these folks have risked their lives for us, for our country. And like, we can give this little thing back to them that starts to give them back themselves so that they can, build their relationships, the ones they want to, the safe ones.
Let's talk. You guys talk about trauma in a way that many people may not have heard before, big T and little t. How do you define those two, and what are some of the little t traumas that are often overlooked?
So it's a common thing to talk about because folks are pretty clear on things that would be sort of big T trauma, right? I mean, surviving 9/11, being in a war, a house fire, a sexual assault. These things are very obviously traumatic. And, fortunately, not all of us are exposed to things at that level. And almost all of us are exposed to little t traumas. And the little t, where it sticks in our gullet a little bit is we don't mean it to be diminishing or diminutive at all. The point for us is that even when, your parents separate, or your mom forgot to pick you up at school one day, or you've had to change houses several times, or you've been bullied. Any of these things are not life threatening, but they do still leave a mark. And a lot of times, what they do is set up our response pattern, and then we become hypersensitive. And so anything that sort of rings that bell again, it just adds on and adds on and adds on. And so we started maybe with one little T, but now we have, sort of a collection of little T's. And physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, our bodies are responding to that basically in the same way as if it was a big T trauma. So, we talk about it as sort of a heuristic, as a shortcut in language, but that's the kind of work that Shannon and I do a lot of now. And we both work with kids primarily in our private practices. And, these kids are exposed to bullying, are exposed to dating violence, are exposed to significant conflict in their families, high conflict divorce, not knowing, how it's going to work when mom and dad do an exchange, when it's time to change custody. And we see what happens in these kids, and we see this distress, we see the anxiety, we see the hypervigilance, we see the desire to please, we see the parentified child, and we see that all of the time. But that's the way we talk about little t and big T trauma. And then just because we exist in a space in mental health and healing that isn't your sort of traditional one-on-one, sit on a couch, talk to each other for 50 minutes, and then, off you go, see you next week therapy. That's sort of the traditional or big T therapy. But we do play therapy and art therapy and music therapy and nature therapy and equine therapy. And these, among other things, are all like, this is part of why we love you, right? Because you see the whole person. You see not just the person in the ICD or, whatever code that you need to report, but you look at like, what strengths do they have? What can we really work on nourishing to support this person? And what challenges are there? What resources do we have in the family, in the school, in the church, in the community to bring in? And so the work that Shannon and I do are really, we look much more broadly than just sort of the identified problem and a typical or traditional intervention or solution.
Yeah, I love that so much. And all of those modalities just make it so much more accessible to so many more people, because there is a fear in going to a traditional therapist, especially if you've never done it before. It's very scary to a lot of people, and there's almost a stigma to it for some. So having all of these modalities is really beautiful and empowering, I think, for so many people. Let's talk about what happens when that trauma goes unprocessed and trauma living in the body. That's something I work with a lot, and I know you guys do too. Tell me more about that and how it plays out for you guys and in your work.
Well, so yeah, I mean, those of us who work in trauma know that trauma gets stuck in the body. And just talking about it in therapy isn't sort of enough. And sometimes it can make it worse because we have to give it an off ramp to get out of the body. And so I think a lot of people who have had trauma who go to just sort of a traditional talk therapy can leave with the experience that it just doesn't help. Talking doesn't help. It doesn't work. And the truth is, there's a lot of things that are therapeutic, sort of like what we were just talking about. There's a lot of ways to work on growth and healing other than just talking about it, right? In playing through it, in doing art through it, in being out in nature and having these other experiences that help shift us in other ways, right? We are so much more than just our words, but we get sort of stuck in our words because we're like these left brain, human nerds who just think that like talking is everything, but we're ignoring 90% of the rest of this system that has this real physical component. So, the Horseplay Collective is our nonprofit, and we have about maybe a dozen practitioners, professionals, paraprofessionals who work with trauma. And many of them are certified in body-based techniques to help release trauma that's stuck in the body. So those can be EMDR, they can be somatic experiencing. Am I missing?
Like craniosacral.
Oh, craniosacral. And it turns out that equine therapy is also a body-based treatment, because in order to really participate in sessions with a horse who, like we've already said, doesn't care about your words and isn't going to talk to you or talk back to you, you have to be able to drop into your body to receive that feedback. And for most trauma survivors, what we've learned is that our body is the least safe place to be. And so we've sort of retreated from the body and we live up here in the brain, and we just talk and talk and talk and think this is what's going to keep us safe. To really receive the feedback that horses have to give you, you have to find a way to drop back in. And that can be a really scary process. And so doing so with a horse, can be they're like this very sort of safe being that's there with you, right, along for the ride. And then they give you this immediate feedback when you do it. That's really, reaffirming. And so that's how, that's the body trauma piece with the equine therapy, that they help us become aware of what's really going on inside of us and help us sort of re-inhabit ourselves so that we can be in relationship with them, and then learn that maybe we can be back in our body and maybe it can be safe again.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And it just reinforces this idea that healing isn't just cognitive. It doesn't just live in your brain. It is relational, it's physiological, it's all those things. So what a beautiful way to experience that. I have to
Well, and
go there.
I'm sure, you've heard, you hear so many people who say, I know it, I can say all the
Right.
right words, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
I think I've said, Allie's heard this hundreds of times, but I'm like, not only am I a therapist, but I'm a professional client, right? I've been on the couch talking about my thoughts and feelings, since early days, early teenage years. And I love therapy. It's like my religion. But I also, I can talk circles around my therapist. Like, no one's going to hold my feet to the fire unless I want them to. Nobody has my number except for me. But when we went to Equus, and I think this is what really sort of pulled on me so strongly, that first experience, when you step into a round pen with a horse, it's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. How do I perform here? How do I please this horse? I know how to please a therapist. I know what to say. I know how to show I'm vulnerable. I know how to show explain all my challenges, all my complexity. Here, I could write the book, right? But like, when you're looking at a horse and I'm like, so what am I supposed to do here? Like, how do I get my A+ here? And there's no answer. And that for me was this like incredibly disarming experience, because it's not about doing, it's about being. And that for me was like this sort of shift, this paradigm shift, where I realized like, oh wow, I do still have a lot of work to do. I've been like talking in circles for decades, and and here I am, and I'm doing okay, but wow, there's like a lot more there that
Yeah,
I
you
didn't.
can't fake it with the horse.
No, right. There's no faking it.
But so that's you said it. I mean, you just nailed it, because what they are with is congruence. Doesn't really matter what that congruence is aligned with, as long as it's congruent. So, many people are a little anxious when they first step up to a horse. It is intimidating. And a lot of people, especially veterans, again, name one of our populations, we tell them, in their training, don't be scared, just move forward. Put that away. You deal with that later, if ever. And so, usually they'll say like, no, I'm cool, I'm good. You put them in the round pen, and this 1,200 pounds of beauty is not leashed, there's no halter, there's no lead line on them. They're at liberty, as is the person. And the horse will move away from them as far as they can. And if the circle is 50, they are 50 feet away from them. And if the circle is 60 feet, they're 60 feet away from them. And you kind of let that go on. And then you go, okay, let's check in for a sec. Like, how are you doing? And as soon as they start to even think, like, yeah, that's a big animal, or yeah, I'm a little nervous. As soon as they start to admit to themselves how their bodies are actually feeling, the horse calmly and gently comes up to them and essentially wraps themselves around them and says, okay, cool. You're in my herd right now because you're in my circle. I see that you are scared. I see that you're feeling vulnerable. That's fine. Memo to me, I'm in charge. I've got this. You step behind me and I'll take care of it. That's what they say as soon as we feel this terrible, scary thing that we're not supposed to feel, vulnerability. And when we weren't in alignment, the horse was just going, damn, what the hell am I going to do if the tiger comes up now? Because I got, homeboy in the ring with me here, and I don't know what he's going to do because he doesn't know what he's going to do. They need you only to be real. That's it. It isn't judgment. It's partnership. It's just such an amazing message. It's such an amazing thing.
An experience.
And
it's because we experience it and feel it that it's like the therapy is almost exponential. Like the learning that happens.
Oh, I bet.
In the ring with a horse, it's sort of like EMDR. You do one EMDR session and it's like 3 months of therapy because the learning is happening down in these physical layers. And it's just, there's so much more growth that happens versus when you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah. It must be an incredible transformation to witness and transformative for you guys to be able to offer that to people. I mean, I think on both levels, right?
Absolutely. It's funny. Like, so Shannon and I both in our private practices work primarily with kids and
teens.
Well, they're right. The joke is like, I'm the early childhood person. So if I don't fix them by the time they're 11, then they go to Shannon. But your traditional therapy, it doesn't work real well with teens. Maybe you've had experience with teens, and it really doesn't work with 5 and 6-year-olds, right? And so we both do play therapy, music therapy, and through that, you can make progress, you can connect, you can make progress, and you can use a language that is more comfortable and natural for kids and teens. But it doesn't mean it's fast. And when I started getting exposed to this kind of work, I was just assisting, like doing kind of grunt work, helping move horses and that kind of thing. But in doing so, I was able to observe, and I was just flabbergasted. Time and time again, I was just like, man, this is not happening in my office in an hour and a half. Like, holy crap. So,
I bet.
you translate to play and art and music and you get somewhere. In our experience, you step it into work with horses and you get somewhere kind of fast, like kind of mind-blowingly fast.
Yeah, I bet. Focusing on early childhood interventions, let's talk about how important that is and the impact that can have, because I think that sometimes that gets lost on people, that a lot of these patterns and this trauma is ingrained early in our lives, and that helping heal that, the earlier the better for us in the long term. And I think that that's a hard lesson for people to learn until it's too late often.
You're so right. So back in the Fred Finch days when Shannon and I met, actually before she got there, when I started that particular program, child welfare, which is now, by the way, called Child and Family Wellbeing, which is awesome because that's what we want to support. Let's name it what we're going for. So they used to actually have a decision tree that basically said under 5, too young for therapy. period. So no one under 5 was getting therapy services at, one of the most difficult periods that they would ever experience in their lives. And when I started, we had, as a result, almost 0 kids referred to us for that program that were under 5. And as we started kind of educating the system and kind of, we'd get maybe referred like a kid that was 7 or 8, and they had a little sibling. And we'd be like, hey, can we just, help the sibling too? And then we'd get in there and be able to see such change, such improvement with the little ones. And I'll get back to why so quickly compared to the 7, 8, 12, 13-year-olds, right? Where it was just harder and harder. And by the time, I'd say well before Shannon actually came into that program, I had gotten up to like 40% of our referrals were under 5. Now, that's not a good thing when you think about essentially babies being involved in the foster care system. Like, that's not a win. But if they're in there, how can we make it the best win we can make it? Well, now we know, science knows, and therapy knows, and now child and family well-being knows that when kids are so young, their brains are still evolving at a tremendously fast rate, and there is amazing plasticity, they call it. And so both the challenges that they experience are constantly rewiring their brains, teaching them lessons about safety, about survival, about what works and what doesn't work, where they can go to get help and soothing. And when we add back in positive things, right, when we give that baby Miracle Grow, they also are able to rewire their brain again and reintegrate that and say, oh, wait, that was really hard. That was really scary. And when I hear this tone of voice, what follows is comfort. When I hear this tone of voice, what follows is food. When I cry this way, what follows is my diaper being changed. And so their brains can actually still, they have the flexibility to make those new connections over and over again. They can hold these sort of disparate realities and then learn that going forward, things could go one way or the other, but these are signs of the better environment, of the safer environment. Oh, and this is also how I elicit a positive reaction from my caregiver, right? Once we're teens and we've been neglected and we've been abused, and that's the pattern we've known. And now we are also dealing with hormones and, all of that. Well, I'm not likely to listen to the caregiver because I don't think anything I can do can get me what I want. And I also get confused, and all of that, but there aren't as many opportunities to make pathways for repair, for restoration, for renewal, for growth. With these little ones, it's everywhere. Kids, babies learn, faster than you can imagine, right?
And they're still believers, right? I mean, I just hung up with a mom,
They're hopeful.
a couple of them today, actually, that were telling me that they're teenagers. They don't believe that they can change. They don't believe that anybody can get better. They're not going to give their parent another try. They're done. That we get so jaded so fast, even faster now than we did when we were teenagers. But little kids, like, they still believe. They still believe in learning. They still believe in growth because that's all they are, And so the sooner we can get involved and have them learn also that help is good. Help can help, right? It sets them up for a better trajectory long term, but also they are more receptive in the moment, both because of their brain development and just like the way that kids learn languages, like overnight, right? They soak it all in and actually do something with it. So it helps them in the moment, but it also sets them up on, such a great path to learn that the help helps, and it can help now and it can also help later, right? And then you can have this positive learning experience around getting support.
I love it. Let's talk about the Horseplay Collective's mission. Go.
Absolutely. So, we were on our way back from Scottsdale, Arizona, that first training, and we just started like dreaming and scheming and wanted to figure out how to bring this amazing service to people who might not otherwise be able to handle it or to get it. And so We actually looked honestly for like 7 years for a place to begin to build this dream. And about 2 years ago, we actually wound up through just a amazing kind of synchronicity connection of a connection from our wedding party.
Another story that could fill a whole episode.
Yeah. This family that's a horse family, and a family that loves their community, and they had a lot of acreage, and they had, over the years sold it, developed it, all kinds of things, and they really wanted some of their last acreage to be a return to horses and b value add for the community. And so, we met up with them a couple of times. I was a little terrified at first by some of the challenges that this property presented,
like no water and no electricity.
and like a hazardous approach that most people are still afraid to do, even though now we've paved the driveway. But ultimately, we decided to jump in, and we have, over the last really year and a half, been working to build our ranch, which we call Reciprocity Ranch. That's the home of Horseplay Collective. And we got up to 6 horses, and those horses, we give them sort of a new lease on life, because they're either retired from what they did, and that may have been competitive dressage or jumping or, whatever, or they're rescued horses. So much like our foster kids, sometimes horses need a new home too. So we give these horses an amazing life. We tend and dote to them like you wouldn't believe. And they get to be our co-facilitators, serving trauma survivors, veterans, foster youth, kids with medical trauma, survivors of abuse and assault, first responders.
What I was going to say about the new lease on life that these horses get, a lot of horses, especially horses that have grown up in a competitive environment, they've never really gotten to be horses. They live in stalls, which we sometimes call cells, and they don't get to spend a lot of time with other horses because they can injure each other. They're like 1,000-pound dogs, like biting and kicking each other. They can really hurt each other. And so they don't get to live as horses do in nature often. And so one of the amazing things about our ranch that, we really love for them is they get to come and spend the second or their last third or of their life or whatever, living in a herd, in a pasture, just like they would in nature. I mean, there wouldn't be fences in nature, but they get to be together and live together and live, the way horses are supposed to be, and then get to use their natural gifts of sensitivity and attunement to help us and help trauma survivors, understand what's really going on with them. There's lots of layers of reciprocity as we talk about them.
Right. And I always say, like, win-win isn't enough, right? We want it to be win-win-win-win. So with what we're doing, we love it. I hope you can tell. The horses get tremendous care. The people get access to this resource. We also planted entire fruit orchard on this land, so we are also nourishing and caring for the land. We do our best to integrate into the community and be a value add there. I've got one neighbor who I always lend like garden tools to, and then I'll just show up and there's like a box of, last time it was an incredible box, watermelons, chives, parsley, broccolini, all this stuff she grew. And she appreciates what we gave. I mean, we just lent her tools. That's it, right? But it's why we called the ranch Reciprocity Ranch. For us, there's just a positive feedback loop. It's not a transactional exchange. It's not 1 for 1 or 100 for 100. It is, what can I give positively into the world, to you, to the ranch, to my neighbor? And then what can you give onwards? And in that, we believe there's healing. We believe that there is healing through helping. And so everybody in every role, in every way associated with this ranch can both give something and come away with hopefully something even more.
And so our motto is give what you can, get what you need.
I love that. So what's on the horizon for the ranch? I know you guys have a couple of big days coming up, volunteer day, demo day. Tell me about those.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been having a couple of different workshops and stuff every month. But upcoming, people may want to get involved in March 28th in the morning. We're going to have a volunteer day. So that's just going to be an opportunity for people to come out. Of course, you get to give carrots and apples and kisses to horses. And, you also get to help us out a little. Maybe it's weeding, maybe it's painting, that kind of thing. So if you're free on that Saturday morning, March 28th, we'd be happy to see you. And then if you really want to see what we're talking about, on April 17th, we have what's called a demo day, because as many words as we've spouted out at you over this last, hour or so, it's still kind of hard to wrap your mind around. And so we periodically do these demo days, and it's just a couple of hours. This one's, I think, 9 to 11:30, and you get to actually see, and some of the people who are there will actually get to participate in the round pen with the horse or in the arena with the horse. And that's not therapy, that's more on the coaching side. So it's safe, and there's no privacy HIPAA issues going on there, but it's a really great way to get sort of a taste test of what this kind of work can do and can mean for you, for your family, for your organization, for your team, because we do team building and that kind of thing as well. And then, we also partner. There's so many amazing organizations in our community. And in April, also, we're partnering with the Riley School, which is a school in San Diego Unified, and they serve kids with special needs and severe, it's such a terrible term, but the term is severe emotional disturbances. So mental health challenges, learning disabilities. And that takes a tremendous amount of resource, extra special staff. The parents deserve absolutely every support we can get in order to support those kids. And so we're partnering with them to have a fundraiser. So, that's the kind of thing, if you want to choose to donate to Horseplay Collective, that's the kind of thing you're supporting, those sorts of partnerships, as well as our ability, obviously, just to provide these services directly to the populations that are so close to our hearts.
Love it. I love it so much. I love all the work you guys are doing. For our listeners who want to learn more or donate, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Simplest thing is the website, and that's www.horseplaycollective.org. We're also on Instagram at Horseplay Collective. So those are two easy ways. And then you can always, email or message from there. And if you want to make a donation, of course, that's readily accessible through the website.
Okay, final question. Someone's listening and they feel like traditional therapy hasn't worked for them. What's the most important thing you want them to know?
There are other options.
Yeah, don't give up. There's so much more out there that can help you heal and grow. And it isn't always the easiest to find, because, the schools that we go to, med school, therapist school, they often put us on a pretty traditional track. So a lot of the therapists that you're going to reach out to are going to be, more well-versed in, let's sit here and talk about it. But there are many alternatives out there. You just have to keep looking, and you will find them. There is art therapy, there is play therapy, there are body-based treatments. EMDR and somatic experiencing for trauma are incredibly powerful.
TMS.
Thank you.
TMS, yes, thank you.
So, and there just isn't a one size fits all prescription, and that's what's nice now that we all live on a rainbow spectrum of everything. There's a greater understanding that we need to find sort of the colors that work for us, and it isn't the same for everyone, and that's okay. No judgment, just information. So just keep looking. We are out there. Allie and I, both, we have our private practice in Solana Beach, where we have a traditional office that is really not very traditional. It's a giant playroom with a sand tray and a cozy corner and a slime tower filled with all of our homemade slime and paint and all kinds of fun stuff. Musical corner. So we have that. And then, now it's been really, really wonderful to get to start to work with kids outside. I mean, in Solana Beach, we would walk on the beach, take the dogs for walks, and that was really great. I did a little surfing therapy with a kid maybe a decade ago. But now at the ranch, having this opportunity to have this place, this space that is just healing on its own. I mean, it just is, like, even without us there, you just going there and being there, it is so beautiful. The bird song is so incredible. There's so much to see, so much to sort of get caught up in. And in this day and age of sort of technological saturation, especially with the younger generations, we've really, these kids have really become disconnected from nature and the outdoors. And the problem is that disconnects us from ourselves, because we are nature, and
Yeah.
instead we're sort of living like we're robots, and we're really not. And then we're dissatisfied and wondering why. And so it's been really interesting in this last year, as we started to meet with kids and teens out at the ranch, seeing what it awakens in them, and how differently they engage. And it's such a powerful experience. And because I work with teenagers, I usually put them to work. And so we're out there
As you
doing
should.
manure meditation, and we have horses to take care of. We got to move. We have stuff to do. And so we do it together. And I have so many parents who are just sort of like standing there, like mouth agape, like, how do you get them to do this? Right. But, it's just part of the vibe there. Like, there's no other choice, right? You just do it. But we're doing it together as a team to take care of these animals who are taking care of us, and we're taking care of the land. And there's just all of this reciprocity, synchronicity that's just so much bigger than just us. And it's a really, really powerful experience for everyone who gets to come and be a part of it. And so, I encourage people to just keep looking for those kinds of experiences, because they're out there.
Yep. And if you're a parent or teacher, remember that for that kid that you're representing too. Some things are going to sound a little bit more sort of out there, but maybe they're exactly where that kid needs to be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Allie and Shannon, thank you so much for expanding the definition of therapy and for building such beautiful and intentional spaces where children and families really can feel safe enough to heal. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit from it and from a different doorway into support. And as always, thank you for being part of this beautiful community of whole person health. I'm so grateful to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
And for leading the kind revolution.
Thank you.
And inviting us.
Thanks for joining the Kind Revolution. If this gave you something real, hope, perspective, or a fresh way to think about health, please share it, subscribe, and pass it on. Medicine won't change on its own, but together we can reimagine it and build something smarter, kinder, and create a system that truly heals. This is the Kind Revolution with Dr. Nanos, where science meets compassion and the future of medicine gets brighter one conversation at a time. Thanks for joining the revolution.